on the sidewalk. It was an empty machine. Yep.
Lieutenant Paul Rorson, R-O-R-R-I-S-O-N. Tonight about 9:45, officers responded to the 45 block of Vanderveer Boulevard regarding shots being fired. When responding officers arrived, there was active gunfire taking place from an apartment complex at 4555 Vanderveer. Our officers first on scene noticed that there was an individual in the upstairs second-story window that had actually had a gun in his hand. He appeared to be an individual who was covered with blood, and he was shooting rounds out the window. This determined that we were going to make an emergency SWAT call out to contain the scene and tend to any victims or do any evacuations necessary immediately. Eventually we were able to make contact with the individual, 3 individuals that were in the apartment, bring them out and take them into custody. Right now we have one person that is in custody, the original shooter. He has some self-inflicted knife wounds in his legs. He was transported to the hospital and treated there. He's subsequently going to be booked into jail for several felony charges.
And the other 2?
The other 2 at this point are being questioned and debriefed by our investigators that are on scene right now. Our SWAT team is still mopping up out here as far as clearing the other apartments. We're checking for any projectiles that might have gone through walls. We do have indications that there were several shots fired from inside the residence, so we're trying to determine where each one of those bullets went to, make sure we don't have any victims in any adjoining apartments, and that's being taken care of right now.
There was some talk about a paintball gun. Is that not true at all?
What happened during the incident, one of the neighbors had a paintball gun, and fearing for his family's safety and he had the gun in his hand. At one point, our officers did see this paintball gun in his hand, so we thought we had possibly multiple shooters that were involved. Later on, it was determined, we brought that individual out along with his family and determined that he was just there to protect his family, and he was not involved in any of the violence directed to the neighborhood here.
And of the other 2 that came out of the shooter's apartment, a man, was it a woman also? Or 2?
Correct. There was another male and a female. They are boyfriend, girlfriend. They were roommates with this individual. At this point, we're still trying to ascertain what their involvement, if any, was with the actions taking place here and determine if they had any knowledge prior of this individual's habits or possession of any firearms or unusual behavior that would lead to this altercation here.
The shooter was using a real gun then?
Correct.
Handgun?
Yeah, at this point we determine it's a handgun. We're still in the process of, right now, our SWAT team has sent in the robot and they've cleared the apartments. We're just right now looking for any additional victims or suspects. At this point, I've just been given the A-OK that nobody else has been located inside the apartments. At this point now, our investigators will go inside and try and recover any weapons that are inside and obtain any additional evidence that would go towards this case.
Do you have a rough idea how many rounds he may have fired?
No, at this point, I know that our original officers, when we were on scene, we heard at least 4. But at this point, there was other, obviously, radio calls coming in before that people were saying that there were shots being fired. So obviously multiple shots were fired. We do have multiple bullet impact strikes on the walls inside. And so we're trying to determine where and account for each of those rounds.
With this being an investigative crime scene, has anybody evacuated from any other homes?
No, at the point when it was a very fluid scene and very dynamic at the initial onset, and when we arrived, there was shots being fired at that time. We instructed the Able Air Support helicopter to broadcast for everybody to stay inside. This is a very large apartment complex, and with an active shooter situation, we did not want to bring people out. They are safer in their home than to bring them out during the incident. So what we did is locked it down and established a tight perimeter and tried to figure out exactly where our threat was and then address that threat.
But are they able to come and go, or do they still have to kind of stay inside so they don't try and go through?
No, we're mopping up the scene now, and we've already brought back in some of the families that did come out, and we've been letting the traffic flow into the apartment complex again. Our patrol officers and investigators have taken over the scene now from SWAT, and they are processing the crime scene at this time.
Was it unit right here in the corner upstairs that had the light on for a long time? Was it that unit?
The address for the building is 4555 Vanderveer. I don't have the exact apartment number for you.
So you're not sure if it was the
but
one
it
that
was
was facing out here?
it was visible outside because our officers did make contact originally with the subject as he was hanging outside the window with a gun in his hand.
Yeah.
So we were at that point we were trying to establish what apartment that was. A SWAT REACT team made entry into the courtyard there, and they were able to engage the suspect at that point and bring him out of the apartment.
Oh, he came into the courtyard then?
Yes, he came out the front door to our SWAT officers that took him into custody at that time.
And that was because of calling him out on bullhorn to come out, or did he just
Yeah,
come
we were
out?
bullhorning, and also he was at points was opening the door and closing it, and they were doing verbal commands with him to come out.
Was he saying anything when he was hanging out the window? Anything to indicate why he was on this?
It appears from preliminary, we can tell it seems he was under the influence of some type of controlled substance, and also or some mental illness factors from statements from the roommates that he has been acting unusual lately. And we do know that from other evidence we recovered that there was some narcotics use taking place also.